So all you need is love. Last week, preached on what women wish men knew. So today is payback time. Today is what men wish women knew. All of us men really want you women to listen very closely today. I had a few women actually tell me their husbands did a few things this past week that they've never done before. They were very thankful for that. So we're hopeful about the women today. My wife's sitting right out in front of me here, so. Of course, she does these things perfect all the time. As do I, of course. But I want to start off, I did a few jokes last week at the women's expense, or the men's expense, and so these are a list of what's called guys' rules. These are the rules that all of us wish that all of you women would go by and live by. Kind of a top 10 in no particular order. Number one, anything we said 6 months ago is inadmissible in an argument. In fact, all comments become null and void after 7 days. Number two, crying is blackmail. There you are. That's it. Number three, if something we said can be interpreted two ways and one of those ways makes you sad or angry, we meant the other one. Number four, you can either ask us to do something or tell us how you want it done, not both. If you already know how to do it, just do it yourself. Number five, whenever possible, please say whatever you have to say during commercials. That's an important one. Number six, Christopher Columbus didn't need directions and neither do we. I like this next one. All men see only in 16 colors, like Windows default settings. Peach, for example, is a fruit, not a color. Pumpkin is also a fruit. We have no idea what mauve is. Number eight, when we have to go somewhere, absolutely anything you wear is fine, really. Number nine, I am in shape. Round is a shape. And last of all, thank you for reading this. Yes, I know I have to sleep on the couch tonight, but do you know men really don't mind that? It's kind of like camping out. So there you have it. Last week we learned what women wanted men to know. Today is equal time. Same reasons as last week, because you can't really love someone unless you truly understand them. And the fact that men are from Mars and women are from Venus makes this kind of thing really a lifelong process, if you will. But again, this is not from what I've said, it's from a survey of 1,000 Methodist men in one of the largest congregations outside Kansas City. And the question that was asked, what is it that a woman does that makes you feel loved? Let me say it again, because this is the question. What is it that a woman does that makes you feel loved? The number one answer from that survey of 1,000 men was that they needed admiration. They needed admiration. I think of the story when Tom Landry, the Hall of Fame coach of the Dallas Cowboys, after he died, they erected a 10-foot tall statue of him outside Cowboys Stadium. The first time his wife saw it, she said, "Strange, I always saw him as being taller than that." There's not a man anywhere who doesn't want to be seen that way by the woman in his life. And again, we're not talking just marriage today. We're talking co-workers, neighbors, friends. This is not just for the married people in the room. Most men want to be their woman's hero so that she will be proud of him and admire him. This is the counterpart to a woman's need for affection. We talked last week, a woman needs to hear in just unique, special ways the words, "I love you." Men, not so much. What men need to hear more is simply, "I'm proud to be your wife." Ladies, if you want to pry the remote control out of your husband's hands, just go over sometime this week, sit in his lap, put your arm around his neck, and say, "You know you are my hero, don't you?" And then be sure to have a cell phone because he'll have a heart attack and you'll need to call 911. Yeah. But it's a good thing. The second thing is listening. Nothing surprising there. That's as true of women as it is true of men. But women need to listen more to feelings, whereas men want you to listen more just how their day was, how things were at work. They want you to know that you care about what they're doing and how they're providing and just what's going on in their life. You know, country singers sometimes seem to have a pulse on the real feel for real life in this country. And so Toby Keith some years ago had a wonderful song that says, I want to talk about me. This is a man talking. I want to talk about me. Wonderful words. He says, we talk about your dreams and we talk about your schemes, your high school team and your moisturizing cream. We talk about your Nana up in Muncie, Indiana. We talk about your grandma down in Alabama. We talk about your guys of every shape and size, the ones that you despise and the ones you idolize. We talk about your heart, about your brains and your smarts and your medical charts and when you start. You know, talking about you makes me grin. But every now and then, I want to talk about me, want to talk about I want to talk about number one, oh my, me, my. What I think, what I like, what I know, what I want, what I see. I like talking about you, usually, but occasionally I want to talk about me. Some women, you just gotta be quiet, which is required for listening. And it may be the hardest thing in the world. I know what you're saying, to get anything out of your guy. But how hard is it to sometimes just stop with full focus and say, tell me about your day. How was work today? How are things going? How hard is that? And then just be available and present to really listen if they in fact say anything at all in response. Number 3, sexual intimacy. Notice this was not number 1, but it was right up there. One man said, when my wife initiates this, when she loves me this way, I feel close to her. I feel her sharing herself with me. So in the survey, while married men said it's not at the top of the list, they certainly said it was an important one to have a strong and healthy marriage. And they made it very clear that when sexual intimacy is used as a method of controlling the relationship, as a way of manipulating distance, if you will, then that can cause all kind of dire consequences. All of us in this room as Christians, sexual intimacy is a gift that God has given us to celebrate within certain boundaries, and to not take part in one of the gifts God has given is, again, to remove and create distance in what needs to be an intimate relationship. And finally, number 4 is simply quality time. While women want quality time to share feelings, what most men seem to think of was simply more activities and things to do together, what Williford Hartley called recreational companionship. In other words, they're not looking for somebody to sit down and share their feelings. Oh, feelings. Yeah. They don't want a conversation partner. They want somebody to go to the ball game with them, or to maybe take a walk with them, or be out in the garden with them, or go see a movie, or go on a trip together, doing this stuff together. It could be all those activities or whatever it is that he likes. And men reported, continually said, that when women want to share in what they like to do, they feel more valued and more loved. But out of this survey, there are also 3 secrets about men that was revealed, and all these men sharing their thoughts. And number 1 was that men need downtime. John Gray, who wrote Men from Mars, Women from Venus, he calls this cave time. And I was thinking, okay, I get it. If your man is like a caveman, you may want to give him some cave time. I get that. But if men need downtime, it may be time in their workplace. It may be just out in the garden or working in the yard. Maybe exercise. It may be just watching a stupid TV show. But men, sometimes they just need that downtime. Here in a couple of weeks, I'll be taking a vacation where I go for a whole week away completely by myself. I've done that at least a week every year. My wife knows that's something I need. She supports me in doing that. Probably glad to get rid of me, but that's another point. But nevertheless, cave time. We need our downtime sometimes to be by ourselves. Number 2, tell women not to expect us to read their minds. Yeah, I say to couples many times in counseling, and actually it's interesting, this is one that's actually oftentimes more of a threat even in good marriages as well as bad marriages. Yeah, you can have the best of marriages 40 or 50 years, you complete each other's sentences, you know where everybody's headed before they hardly even start, but it's never ever fair to think that the other person knows what you're thinking if you don't say it out loud. I've tried to, I don't want to give a sexist example here, but I'm just trying to, so if I am, just forgive me. It's the man in me. But women get their hair done, for instance, and they come home, they're feeling pretty good about it. And they walk in the door, and of course, we men don't even notice. And we don't even say anything about it. And so the resentment grows. And I just want to say sometimes, why don't you just say to your man, you know, on a 1 to 10 scale, what do you think? And men always say 11 when they ask that kind of question. But quality time, but don't expect us to read your minds. Help us out here. Then last of all, it goes back to the first need. All men need to feel like they are a knight in shining armor. They are your hero. Men want women to be proud of them. John Gray again, he writes, deep inside every man there is a hero or a knight in shining armor. More than anything, he wants to succeed in serving and protecting the woman he loves. When he feels trusted, he becomes more caring. When he doesn't feel trusting, he loses his energy and aliveness. Remember that movie, Pretty Woman? Yeah, I've watched that movie. Pretty Woman. At the end of it, Richard Gere comes down the street. You've seen the movie, in the white limousine, holding up the umbrella like it's his saber. He's the knight in shining armor, and Julia Roberts just is adoring of him. And it's a scene where every man, every woman watching that movie said, yeah, that's what I want in my relationship as well. So where does the Bible come in on all this? Yeah, I said last week, if you want to read the best owner's manual you could ever find about relationships between men and women, go to the Bible. But be sure you get the right interpretation. You know, we get these words from Paul today. Some of these words have been manipulated, they've been abused, they've been misinterpreted, they've been taken all out of context, especially by men. Because there's always that verse, that one that everybody doesn't like. It said, wives, be submissive to your husbands. Nobody likes that verse anymore. But that's not all there is, of course. I remember several churches back, a line I had in a sermon about this, just seemed to hit right on top of it. Just said, you know, if you're in a relationship where you're having to argue over who wears the pants, you already got a problem. I think that's biblical, because Paul says it really goes both ways. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. We know that Christ died for the church. Any woman would take up this offer in a second. So what you have here is not only a challenge, but you also have a wonderful invitation to outlove and outcare the other. But the key verse where it all comes together is at Ephesians 5:21. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. In other words, it's a mutual submission. It's not one more than the other. If there's any competition between you and your spouse, it should always be who can outlove, who can outserve, who can outcare for the other. What makes a marriage a Christian marriage is not a hierarchy, it's a coarchy, with Jesus being the unseen partner in all that you do. It is no longer being 50-50, it's being 100-100. When your marriage is one where there's an unending, complete, passionate, ongoing commitment to each other, that's when it becomes a Christian marriage. Some years ago, previous church, a friend of mine was telling me about how he and his wife were increasingly distressed over how many marriages are on the rocks these days. He said they went out to eat one evening. He said to his wife, I don't know what I would do if our marriage was like some of our friends and it looked like it was headed down the tube. My friend said to me, Bill, I'll never forget what she said to me. She locked her eyes on me and she said, I know what I'd do. I'd fight for you. I'd never get up without putting up the fiercest fight of my life. Wow, I would fight for you. And my friend said, the security he felt, the confidence he felt, and the love that he felt because of that, just you couldn't even hardly quantify. Men are for Mars. Women are for Venus. Men need to be admired. They need to be listened to. They need sexual intimacy where they are not always the ones initiating it. But most of all, they want to be that knight in shining armor for each of you. Some years back in the 90s when I was in Marion, Virginia, I was part of what was called the Promise Keepers. Some of you may remember that was very popular, especially back in that time, a men's ministry. And a group from our church drove down to Charlotte on a Saturday, and we joined with over 100,000 men. Maybe some of you went to it. They were at a Promise Keepers rally in the Charlotte Motor Speedway. I'll never forget what one of the speakers there did. Over 100,000 men. He said, okay, I want you to shout out your last name. It was just like the Tower of Babel. I mean, all these different voices coming out. Then he said, I want you to shout out your favorite team. And some said, Panthers or Redskins or whatever, just all these different voices. Then they said, now shout out the name of the denomination your church is. And again, all these different voices. Then he said, I want you to shout out in unison the name of your Savior. And over 100,000 men, all of one accord in total unison, yelled out the name Jesus. Why do I say that? Because it's true. Men are from Mars. Women bear with us. Women are from Venus. Men don't give up. But we all have one thing in common. One thing that overcomes all our differences. All of us have the unifying spirit and presence and power of the same Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And so as different as you may be with your coworker or your friend or your spouse, Jesus Christ can make all the difference in every relationship. Our closing hymn this morning, a hymn of invitation. It's hymn number 277, Take My Life and Let It Be Consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Maybe there are some this morning who want to make your profession of faith, to invite Christ to be your Lord and Savior, or unite with this church or another church family or some renewed commitment. I'll be in the front to receive you. Let us stand and sing to the glory of God, hymn number 277.